Saludos amigos de Metro Puerto Rico y bienvenidos a otro Punto por Punto, donde discutimos las noticias del momento con las personalidades noticiosas del momento. La semana pasada se conoció un nuevo plan fiscal para la Autoridad de Energía Eléctrica por parte de la Junta de Supervisión Fiscal. Y hoy nos acompaña en nuestra sala de redacción el director ejecutivo de este ente fiscal creado por la Ley Federal Promesa, Robert Mujica. Bienvenido.
Muchas gracias. Saludos y gracias por la oportunidad.
Claro que sí. Vamos a conducir la entrevista. Yo le hago las preguntas en español, pero se siente cómodo, puede responder en inglés. Sí. Hablemos de este nuevo plan fiscal de la Autoridad de Energía Eléctrica. Por lo que se ha estado reportando, se elimina el cargo heredado que era para el pago de la deuda, pero contempla un aumento en la tarifa de la luz. ¿Para qué sería ese aumento y de cuánto sería?
Okay. The fiscal plan is not a political document. It is an x-ray of the system. And what it actually says is we need to understand the state of repair of the system. And no one has done this for 30 years. Back in 2017, there was a rate order, and even then, the government said, we know that this is not enough to repair the system, but the people of Puerto Rico can't pay for decades of neglect all at once. So what this says is, this is what the system needs. This is the maintenance and repairs that the system needs. We cannot add on top of that an additional 7 cents to pay the debt, 4 cents to pay the pensions, at the expense of what the system needs. So what it does say is, this is what the system needs. If there's a disagreement on what the system needs, let's have an honest conversation about the state of repair of the system. We did this because we saw, as everyone saw, New Year's Eve blackout. It was the culmination of a year of load shed events, blackouts. Everyone understands that the system is not functioning. And what we want to make sure is that, first and foremost, there is investment in the system before you add on what the bondholders are asking for, which is 7 to 8, when you count interest, almost 10 cents to pay the debt. What we're saying simply is the people of Puerto Rico can't afford to pay for an additional 7 to 10 cents on top of what is needed to fix the system.
Ya en algún momento se había hablado que los fondos federales post los huracanes eran suficientes para reparar el sistema y tener un sistema nuevo. Eso ya no es el escenario.
Actually, some people have said that that would be repairing the system. What we know now is that is not to repair the system for the next 30 years. The fiscal plan is a snapshot of what is needed for the next 30 years. Repair and maintenance of the system over 30 years. We may need additional capital funds beyond that, but just the state of repair, the federal funds is not enough to do that.
Aún así, este retrato, que es el plan fiscal, plantea que necesitan entonces un aumento en la tarifa base, sin contar el tema de los bonistas. ¿Eso es correcto?
What it is saying is that the system needs more than is currently in the system. And like I said before, this is not new news. In 2017, the government said this. And they said, we just can't afford to fix it. And what we're saying is, it is more complicated than just saying, we need to increase funding for the system. We need to increase funding for the system first, before you decide how much debt can be added on top of that. What we do know is that if you fund the system at the current level, the people can't afford to pay 7 to 10 cents on top of that. And the system is currently failing. And the system needs more money. And we got that information from who? From PREPA, from the current operators. They know the system better than anyone else. Again, this is not a political document, but we want to make sure before there's an agreement to pay the bondholders what they're asking for, which is $12 billion. We know that that is going to come at the expense of repair and maintenance for the system. So I don't want 10 years from now people to be saying, well, the system's failing. How come we don't have money to pay for it? How come we can't increase the rates to pay for it? And it's, you know why? Because we agreed to pay 9 cents to pay for the legacy debt.
Esto era algo que se había hablado antes. Habían otros planes fiscales previos para la Autoridad de Energía Eléctrica que contemplaban el pago a la deuda, y habían voces que decían que no es posible porque el sistema está dañado y vamos a pagar más, una tarifa impagable o que hace mucho daño a la economía, pero siempre se mantenía ese pago para los bonistas. Esta vez, ¿qué cambió?
Yeah, that's a great question, because what changed here is we are seeing the system fail before our very eyes. And we're seeing that the system can't keep the lights on, literally. So we want to go back and, well, I wanted to understand, the board wanted to understand what is happening. And then what we realized was happening is since 2017, there was never the analysis of what does the system actually need. And the system is failing faster than we're able to repair it right now because it's so old. For 40 years, right, the investment wasn't there. That is what's changed. What's changed is we're watching the system fail before our eyes. And before we conclude the Title III process for PREPA, let's make sure we all understand what the system actually needs.
Está el plan fiscal, pero está también ahora el proceso del negociado de energía para revisar la tarifa básica. ¿Es ahí entonces donde el negociado debe aprobar ese aumento que tal vez se plantea en el plan fiscal, o no necesariamente ellos podrían aprobarlo?
Yeah, so that's the point. What's happening right now with el negociado de energía, their process is the bondholders have asked them, when you consider what the new rate is, make sure you add $12 billion, 7 cents plus interest, which is likely going to be close to 10 cents. The bondholders are saying, add 10 cents to the rate. In addition to that, they're asking the operators, how much do you need to operate the system? What the fiscal plan is saying is, the amount you need to operate the system the rate will not support adding 10 cents on top of that. El negociado de energía is going to be making their own decision as to how much is needed. We want to make sure that they have all of the information, but they're asking themselves. They're going to be asking and asking the same questions. They're going to make their own determination. But again, we want to be clear. The system needs money for maintenance and repair, and we all need to understand how much is needed so that over the next, and it's not just next year, 5 years from now, for the next 30 years, how much does the system need, and can the system afford to pay $12 billion for the debt?
El negociado de energía en su proceso le pidió a Luma, que es quien le presenta el presupuesto, que contemple el escenario del pago a los bonistas, el escenario de 2.600 millones, el escenario de 8.500 millones. Ellos van a hacer su propio análisis, como usted me está diciendo, ellos van a ver los números. Al final del día o al final del proceso, ¿qué determinación prevalece? Si el negociado dice, vamos a poner un aumento para pagarle a los bonistas en la tarifa básica y encima de los dineros que se necesitan para las mejoras, que es lo que ustedes han dicho que sería como insostenible a nivel económico, ¿qué prevalece, el negociado o ustedes podrían volver a entrar en el proceso?
El negociado de energía makes the final determination. They're the ones that will make the final determination on the rates. The court will make a determination as to how much debt is needed, how much is needed to support the debt. So the court, we're saying $2.6 billion is all that can be afforded. The court will make that final determination. El negociado is going to make the determination as to what is the system actually needs. They will make that final determination.
El negociado, la decisión de ellos es para verano del 2025.
Yeah.
El proceso en el tribunal se extiende. ¿Cómo se compaginan ambos procesos en términos de una línea de tiempo?
Yeah. According to Act 17, that process that the negociado is making right now is supposed to happen every 3 years. Between 1989 and 2017, they didn't do it for almost 30 years. Then between 2017 and 2025 today, they still haven't done it. So they're supposed to be doing this every 3 years. So the determinations they're making right now should be in effect for 3 years, and then every 3 years after that. And that is why we're saying, let's not take a short look at this as to right now. We need to look long term, because this is about the future of Puerto Rico. And the decisions that are made now will be affecting for a very, very long time. Once we settle on how much debt is going to be paid, that will be fixed forever. That you won't be able to change every 3 years. The amount you pay for repairs and maintenance, that is something that is going to be re-looked at every 3 years.
Okay. ¿Por qué no se compartió con la gobernadora el plan fiscal que presentaron la semana pasada?
Yeah. We had, this plan is a year in the making, right? We've been working on it for over a year. There have been over 50 different meetings with PREPA, who is still there, with the operators getting the money, but with PREPA, there's been over 50 meetings. January was the culmination of the end of it. We briefed them, we spoke to them about what it was. The final document wasn't shared to them until before that, but it's not a political document. It is not a part of a negotiation. It is not a part of give and take process. It is, these are the numbers, this is the analysis. Now that the plan is out there, right, people can discuss and it will be scrutinized. But I think the governor and us should be on the same place, right? What is the least amount, right, that the people of Puerto Rico can pay? How do we make sure that we have an energy system that is reliable for the people of Puerto Rico, which is priority one? And then after that, right, how much is available for the bondholders? We want to get out of the Title III bankruptcy, and we're at the end. The reality is we're at the end. We negotiated 10 different agreements with bondholders, successful, over the last 8 years. This is the final one. It is the most complicated and the most hard because it impacts the people of Puerto Rico the most because of the rates.
Usted menciona que esto no es un documento político, que no está sujeto a negociación, pero la gobernadora utiliza la palabra negociación, dice yo no voy a negociar con una pistola en la apuntada, y les pide que pongan en pausa este plan en lo que ella revisan las proyecciones de costos, cuestiona que hayan sido los operadores privados los que hayan dado las proyecciones de costos. ¿Se considera esa petición o ya esto es un documento que ahora pues sigue su curso?
We have always updated the fiscal plan to reflect material changes, changes in laws. But we can only go by the information that we have, and this is the best information available right now. If there are changes in laws, if there are other things, if there are mistakes, for example, we would take those right into account. So we have always said, and we've always told the court, that the plan can be revised based on material changes, but it can't be revised based on, you know, what we would like to happen. But we hope to have an open dialogue, and again, this is really about making sure that the public has a view of how bad the state of repair of this system is. It is a conversation in Puerto Rico that people have not wanted to have. Nobody wants to say how bad it is, right? But it's not a reflection on this administration. What happened to the system goes back decades. Nobody wants to talk about how bad it is. But people of Puerto Rico know how bad it is. They're feeling it. They're watching it when you go home and turn the lights on, right? I watch it. I go home, I turn the lights on, nice, right? My ice is melted. The food isn't there. I get it. We understand it. People feel it. This is a honest view of what the challenges are for this system. And it's important because whatever decision is made on how much to pay debt, that comes out of how much money you put in the system for maintenance and repairs.
La gobernadora dice que su plan es cambiar a gas, que eso va a tener economías en combustibles, que va a tener eficiencia, pero esos son, como usted me dice, no a futuro. No se puede entonces eso tomar ahora mismo en cuenta dentro del plan fiscal como algo certero.
We don't know for certain. The legislature still hasn't acted on some of the changes that would be required. The plan is always based on the current law. But there are some very bold proposals, changes that we made, and we will look at those. If we can know for certain the laws are changed, we will then reflect those in the analysis that we do. as of right now, right, those are proposals. And we can't base 30-year fiscal plan on the current proposals.
Usted mencionaba que deben estar en la misma página el gobierno, la gobernadora y ustedes, de que se debe pagar lo menos posible, un sistema más eficiente. Le pregunto, ¿le crea suspicacia a la Junta de Supervisión Fiscal que el director de AFAF y los nuevos consultores, Julian Lockett, hayan en el pasado representado bonistas de la autoridad?
I don't know the history, right, of that association. Right, I'm going to presume that everyone has, right, the best interests of the people of Puerto Rico in mind. Right, they made their decision as to who they want to do their analysis. Right, respect that, but I'll leave those questions up to them.
¿Cree que haya ambiente después de ese choque, como se ha descrito por algunos, entre la Junta y la Fortaleza con el plan fiscal, para buscar esos dineros de 2.600 o el dinero que el tribunal establezca fuera de la tarifa en otros fondos del gobierno, que la gobernadora pueda buscar ese dinero en el fondo general, en ahorros?
Yeah. We want to have that conversation with the government as to what are the options. There are only a couple of options. Either it's on the rate, right? It's on the tariff, or it's going to come from some other source. And there are limited sources. And wherever it comes from, there will be implications for the people of Puerto Rico, right? Any dollar that you spend here or for bondholders come at the expense of investments for the people of Puerto Rico in other areas. And I don't think people think investments in healthcare, investments in education. There are risks related to federal funds. There's risks related to Medicaid, the ability to withstand a shock or a downturn in the economy. I was budget director for a long time in New York. I know how to manage budgets over the long term. Puerto Rico doesn't have a 5-year budget plan. It doesn't exist. I always had to do a 5-year plan, 6 years actually. I actually went to 6 years. So we know what does the outlook look like over the next 5 years, because the decisions that we make today in the budget impact every year the year after. And we can't do it year by year. That is what Puerto Rico did. That is why for 16 consecutive years, you had budgets that are out of balance, and that's why we have an oversight board. Let's not repeat the mistakes of the past. The decisions we make today, let's look at it, do them with eyes open. What are the impacts over the next 5 years? And what is in the best interest of the people of Puerto Rico? And I think that us and the governor, again, have the same interests, right? We're aligned on those.
Escuchándolo, pienso que en un momento dado la gobernadora en la campaña planteó pagar la deuda completa de dineros que estaban en las cuentas del Departamento de Hacienda por dineros, recaudos que se habían hecho más allá de las proyecciones o deuda que en un momento no se pagó y está ese dinero ahí. Pero ahora tenemos, como usted menciona, los temas de recortes federales, Medicaid. Esa posibilidad de pagar de un golpe, ¿todavía existe? ¿No existe? ¿Cómo usted lo ve?
Every dollar is committed to other things, right? The concept that we can just use this and have no consequences is how Puerto Rico went bankrupt, right? In 2015, the government was saying we can issue new debt. And then they went bankrupt in 26, where we can't even pay it, right? So I'm gonna leave campaign issues aside, right? We're governing now. I've been doing this a long time. I'm doing this for 25 years. I've always come to agreements. I've always become disagreements. I've had disagreements with legislatures, disagreements with governors. At the end of the day, we all want to govern. We all want to get to results. And that's what I'm here for. To get results, work together, all in the best interest of the people of Puerto Rico. Let's have an honest conversation. And I want to have a non-honest, not political conversation about what the implications of these decisions are today and over the long term.
Si el plan fiscal de la Autoridad de Energía Eléctrica deja fuera, y finalmente el negociado aprueba una tarifa que deja fuera ese cargo heredado para el pago de la deuda, ya no quedaría también fuera de discusión lo que se le llamó en algún momento dado el impuesto al sol, de que las personas que tenían placas solares también tenían que pagar el cargo legado.
Yeah. There hasn't been any discussion of that charge as long as I've been here, and been here for 2 years. So that hasn't been discussed. But what's important is to understand whatever is decided is what the system's needs are. What the bondholders are asking is for us to add almost 10 cents on top of the bill to pay for the debt. None of that goes into the system. None of that goes to repair the system, to deal with the maintenance of the system. That is where the problem is, right? We think that the system needs a lot of investment. It's not just this operator, whoever the new operator is. If there's a new operator, right? The governor has said they're not in favor of the current operator. I understand. We need to hold people accountable. But whoever the new operator is going to inherit the same system in the same state of repair with things that haven't been repaired for decades. So this is just an honest assessment of that. Let's get past, right, the he said, she said, and let's just move on to figure out how can we get beyond Title III while maintaining and not at the expense of the investment that is needed in the system.
Si se habla de 10 centavos adicionales por el pedido de los bonistas, ¿cuánto podría llegar el kilovatio hora? ¿40 centavos?
Yeah, that's the question, right? That's the honest question that we need to have, right? If you need to know how much you need to invest in the system, how much can the people of Puerto Rico afford to add on top of that? And what we're saying in the fiscal plan is, once you look at the state of repair of the system, there is nothing left to add on top of that to pay for the legacy debt.
Lo escuché hablar de el nuevo operador que sea. En un momento dado se hablaba que la Junta defendía a Luma, que la Junta planteaba que Luma no podía, que era mucho riesgo cambiar el operador. ¿Ya ustedes están abiertos a ese cambio?
What we've always said is the operators need to be held accountable. There needs to be management, right? There needs to be leadership, and there needs to be coordination. That's why we were open to the idea of having a coordinator, right? Because we stepped into that gap last year. So what we're saying is, if there is a new operator, we need to have a plan. We need to not leave a gap. What we can't do is go back to the prepa that failed, the people of Puerto Rico. Sometimes as time elapses, we forget how we got here. People forget what happened in 2017. They forget the bankruptcies that happened. They forget what was going on in 2014. In 2014, PREPA said that the system is in a state of good repair. We can pay for the debt. And then they quickly went bankrupt soon thereafter. That is what PREPA said. So let's not forget about that. We're in 2025 now. So if there's a desire to have, right, some successor, right, legislation more, it's a successor that can hit the ground running so that we don't lose more time. We've lost time, and that's part of why the system is where it is, because the system continues to deteriorate while this is happening.
¿Cómo es la relación de la Junta con la figura del SAR, que era un director de la Autoridad de Energía Eléctrica? Y si la gobernadora piensa hacer un cambio de operador, y como usted dice, tiene que ser alguien que entre que no haya un step back, ¿cree que él es la persona que puede llevar este proceso?
I don't think there's anyone talking about, that I've heard, PREPA going backwards. Moreover, Act 17 actually says that there has to be private operators. That's the law. The governor hasn't proposed changing that, even in her proposed changes to that law. But I have a lot of respect for José Colón. I've met him. We've met many times. I believe he's, right, actively working, right, to make change. But that means that we all have to be working together, right? People can't be pointing fingers at, it's this person's fault, that person's fault, this person's fault. The people of Puerto Rico are tired of blame. They just want the system to work. And it's our responsibility, right, as the people who are working with the government, us, Fortaleza, the operators, him, to bring everyone together. How can we move the ball forward as opposed to saying this is this way and this is that way? Then years pass. So we just want, again, I want a result. When I worked in New York, we built bridges, we built airports, we did these things. There were lots of challenges. People had different opinions on which way to go, but we ended up getting results. So here, let's get a result, right? And if people want to disagree, bring it in the room, figure it out, and let's all figure out a path forward so that we can get a result. I'm not going to defend anyone's malfeasance. If people have done something wrong, they need to be held accountable, and then let's move on.
Es difícil eso, es difícil en Puerto Rico ahora mismo, en este contexto, que todas estas figuras se pongan de acuerdo en trabajar juntos hacia adelante sin echarse culpa unos a otros, el SAR de Energía, a Luma, la legislatura, la Junta de Control Fiscal. Es difícil ponerse de acuerdo y decir, no, vamos a, como dicen los puertorriqueños, vamos a bregar para echar esto adelante.
Governing is hard. If it was easy, it would have been done already, right? What we're trying to do is take the politics out of it, and the board can do that, and let's have a more honest, right, discussion. It is not in our interest to put more money in the system than the system needs, right? But what it is in our system to make sure that the system has what it needs before, right, we take money away that will never come back to the system. So, yeah, governing is not easy. Politics is the art of the possible. It's possible to fix this. And I think we can. And I want to get, it's a new administration. I want to work together. I want to work with the new administration together to get results.
¿Qué pasa con el sistema de retiro dentro del plan fiscal? ¿Qué va a pasar ahí? Ahora mismo también se dice que ya la solución intermedia se está agotando y que se van a quedar sin dinero para las pensiones.
This is why the numbers, right, are important. Because when you add these numbers, right, then you understand why this conversation is happening. The bondholders are asking for 7 to 10 cents for principal and interest. Pensions is another $4 billion. That's another 2 to 3 cents. Before you even get to any investment in the system. That is what the fiscal plan is saying. What the fiscal plan is saying is, and we need to do all this investment. But if you're going to argue about how much investment the system needs, and when I say investment, I'm talking about maintenance and repairs to the system. The system is not in a state of good repair. How do we get the system in a state of good repair? Because that has to be added. PREB's going to make the determination. And then the bondholders want to add another 8, 9, 10 cents on top of that, and then you have to add money for pensions on top of that. Those numbers impact people. And we have to have a real conversation on that. It's not something that can be buried. It shouldn't happen behind the scenes in a back room. It's a discussion, and the fiscal plan, brings that discussion forward.
En el interín, en lo que se aprueba, lo que sea la tarifa, en lo que termina el proceso de título 3, ¿qué se puede hacer con ese sistema de pensiones?
Right now, we're making payments. So, PREPA has, and we've authorized the approval of monies that come into the system, using that to make payments for the next few months. The board has made it a priority not to have the pension payments lapse, right? It's important. Like it's important in our plan to fund the pension system. That's been a priority. Others criticize us for doing that. Some people will say, right, the priority should be the bondholders over the pension system, right? That's not been the board's position. So, we have some money for the next few months. We're going to have to revisit that. We've always figured out a way to do it. It's important to make sure that the retirees get paid.
En el proceso de título 3, recientemente los bonistas están objetando las facturas de consultores de la Junta de Supervisión Fiscal. Dicen que en 8 años McKinsey ha facturado 400 millones. ¿Cuál es la posición de la Junta sobre esa controversia?
Yeah. Over 8 years, the board has negotiated agreements for 10 different bankrupt entities, 7 different times in court. And again, the government entered into debt that's valued at about $58,000 for every household in Puerto Rico. The board, in this amount of time, has cut that in half. And we still have PREPA to go. The cost of that was not inexpensive. Those funds are not just the board's expenses. Those funds are also the government's expenses. And let's remember, on the other side of that, the bondholders, the creditors are also incurring their own legal expenses against us. we're not going to lay down, right, and allow us to get steamrolled in court. We're going to get the best defense possible. And the result has been, there's been a cost in order to save $50 billion. But the reality is the government of Puerto Rico entered into debt that was valued at $73 billion. And now the people of Puerto Rico are going to pay $50 billion less in interest and principal. And there was a cost to that. Going into each one, right, I'm not going to go into each category, but overall, there was a cost to the bankruptcy. We're done with most of it. We have this last one left. Hopefully we can get this one done soon.
Aprovecho que está con nosotros para tocar algunos otros temas, los municipios, sobre todo en estos días que se acerca el fin del año fiscal. Se está planteando que al menos hay 9 municipios que no podrían operar y vuelven al tema del fondo de equiparación, que ese fondo se eliminó. ¿Hay algún compromiso de la Junta con los alcaldes?
Yeah. So the equalization fund is gone. It was actually eliminated before the board. It wasn't our proposal to eliminate the equalization fund. We move on. Right now, overall, the municipalities are getting more money than they got when they were getting the equalization fund. But I understand that they're still concerned, and some municipalities might not be getting as much. In this year's budget, we added $89 million for municipalities, right? We did it in a couple of different ways, but $89 million. There's right now $35 million that's left unspent. We've prioritized the municipalities that are in the most distress first. So if there are 9 municipalities, I don't know, I haven't heard the 9 number or who they specifically are. We'll look at them. Municipalities are very important. They deliver services close to the people. We want to make sure they deliver the services efficiently, but we also want to make sure, right, that they have the resources that they need. Not that there's waste, not that they're using it for other things, because we do care about that, but we want to make sure that, again, they have the resources they need. And we address that in this year's budget. And if we need to do more in next year's budget, we'll look at that. You know, I've met with the mayors regularly. I'll continue to meet with them.
De hecho, usted menciona que el fondo de equiparación, eso ya es pasado, y le escuchaba ayer en televisión que desde el 2017 a los alcaldes ellos sabían que ya ese dinero no iba a estar, vinieron unos fondos federales, no se prepararon para un nuevo escenario.
That's the point. It has been phasing down, and they know. But also, it's not that we've done nothing. We have also been adding funds over the last couple of years for them. You know, there's a waste fund. We added an essential services fund last year, $15 million, which is going to be actually $30 million. But we want to make sure any dollars that we're giving them so they can operate, they can use it for services that impact people the most. The new funding that we gave them this year goes to 911, emergency response, goes to the Ama de Llaves program, right? So those are important programs. And the municipalities have stepped up to do those. So we want to make sure we're supporting them in those programs. So as, you know, we look at what they need, right? We don't want it to go back to the time, the waste and those things that happen. But they are providing services to people, and we want to make sure they have the funds to do those things. So we'll work with the government as well, right, on their needs.
De hecho, ya comenzó el proceso para el presupuesto, para el próximo presupuesto. Ya ustedes le dieron un calendario a la legislatura, al gobierno. ¿Hay que contemplar los posibles recortes federales en este nuevo presupuesto?
You know, this goes back to the other question, right? How much resources does the government have to deal with that? Every state, right, is looking at that. We have no reason to believe right now, right, that there's an impact that we are taking into account in this budget. But we do need to pay attention to what risks are. Managing a budget over the long term is about managing risk. Not ignoring it, not putting your head in the sand, but managing it, paying attention to what could happen, right? Not just the good things, but also the worst things. And that's a conversation we want to have with the government over 5 years. How do we prepare a budget that takes into account the long-term risks? And there are lots of risks, right? There are risks related to storms, there's risk related to recessions and economic downturns. Even the federal money, it's going to run out, even if it doesn't get reduced. It's going to go away. And how is the government going to operate when those funds are gone? You know, there's a Medicaid issue. It has nothing to do with anything new. It goes back, 4 years, 3 years. How will we manage those things? So these are all things I think responsibly we can work with the government on how to manage them. But in this budget, we are not contemplating any reduction in federal funds.
¿Cree que este año podrá completarse el proceso de presupuesto por la vía constitucional o volverá a ser el presupuesto de la Junta de Supervisión Fiscal?
Oh, no, I'm hoping that we can work on a budget with the governor that is balanced, that is responsible, that meets the needs of the people of Puerto Rico.
La Universidad de Puerto Rico hoy amanece otra vez en un paro, vuelve el tema del presupuesto, se dice que es que la Junta le ha cortado demasiado en muy corto tiempo. ¿Cómo ve la Junta la Universidad de Puerto Rico?
Yeah. There's going to be there's a leadership change, there's new changes there. Puerto Rico was always a jewel of Puerto Rico. They produce both a form of social mobility for people on the island. They produce great engineers and certain aspects of it. Many people that work in our office are graduates of the university. I'm a graduate of public university. We need to invest in the system. We need to invest in the system in a way that they have a plan for the changing environment. The reality is, the data came out on the birth rates recently, right? Some of the lowest ever in Puerto Rico. Those are the future students for UPR. How do we deal with that? How do we deal with these changes? The economy is changing, right? Some of the classes, the curriculum of the past might not fit the future. But that's a conversation to be had with the students, with the teachers, in a responsible way. And then resources need to be invested in the system as well. It is not one-sided. Again, reductions were made when Puerto Rico was bankrupt. Reductions had to be made to bring the budget back into balance. Now here we are. It's time to make investments. That's why over the last 2 years, we've added over $200 million to the university. And all we want is to work with the government, work with the university, so that those things can be invested in the future. Same thing. Next 5 years, next 10 years, what is the university going to look like to address some of these issues? It's not going to come from the board. It's going to come from the university itself. There are resources. Are we going to go back to the old numbers of what was on there? Probably not. That comes at the expense of other things. But can new resources be added? Yes. And we hope we can work with, whoever is there, work with them to come up with a plan for the future that is funded.
Y como última pregunta, una pregunta que se discute mucho, ¿hasta cuándo la Junta se ve en Puerto Rico? Una comisión presentó un informe en enero que decía que estarían hasta el 2030. ¿Ustedes tienen una fecha estimada de cuánto tiempo estarán en Puerto Rico?
Yeah. Under promesa, it's 4 consecutive balanced budgets and access to the credit markets at reasonable rates. Last year, I thought we had a balanced budget, 3% growth. It was responsible. And then we ended up with a budget being proposed that had a 9% spending increase. And then we had to then not approve that spending and approve our own budget. It was not necessary. We weren't doing any cuts. Hopefully this year, let's do a reasonable budget that takes into account the economic realities, the revenue realities, the long-term outlook and risks. Pass that budget, get it certified, get a balanced budget, and then let's do 3 more. That is what we want. In addition to that, there are things that need to happen at the same time. So it's not like we say, and then we need to stay for all these other things to happen. There's no functioning accounting system. At the end of the year, we don't know how much money has been spent. No business operates like this. Your household doesn't operate like this. But there's an opportunity to fix it, right? Working with the government right now, there's plenty of time to make those fixes. Because it's not us asking for that. It is the financial markets who want that. A lot of people got burned in 2016 and 2017 when the debt couldn't be paid, and then they realized there was no audited financial statements because there was no accounting system, nothing was up to date. So the budget process, I've been doing budgets a long time. 17 years in the legislature, 7 years in the executive branch. Republicans and Democrats. The numbers are the same. Like, math is math. Accounting is accounting. We have to acknowledge that. It goes to the proper conversation. Honest conversation of what we have, what we don't have, what the out years look like. But we can do that. Have a budget system that actually works, that people have confidence in, that is transparent and open. Have a system the accounting system, same thing. And then by the time we get to 4 years of balanced budgets, we can say, what happened in 2016 is not going to happen again, because we've done things that prevent that from happening. Because I would ask you, do you think that today the lessons have been learned, things have changed, so that the things that happened that led to the bankruptcy won't happen again? I've asked people on the street if they think this, right? I won't tell you what their answers are. You can conclude those on your own. But do people actually think that things have changed? And we want things to change. We also don't want to be here, right? I can tell you, I would like us to be finished. Let's get the 4 balanced budgets done. Let's do the other things that are necessary so that we can say there are things in place now that prevent what happened last time from happening again.
Bueno, muchas gracias por haber estado con nosotros acá en la redacción de Metro Puerto Rico. Estaremos muy pendientes a ese portal de la Junta de Supervisión Fiscal, que de ahí sacamos muchísimas noticias. Gracias.
Gracias.
Ustedes, amigos de Metro Puerto Rico, los invitamos a que se mantengan conectados a todas nuestras plataformas digitales.